Feel free to just think about this as well, and we will pop it in the chat also for those of you who haven't seen it yet. And I will read it out loud. So the free write is: a student is wearing headphones in class, and you notice them doodling or playing with a toy. What are your thoughts on this? There is a Padlet as well if you would like to share your thoughts with the rest of us. I will bring that up. And I think we also, okay, yes, we are recording. Great. Yeah, so the QR code goes to the Padlet. I'm going to give you about 2 minutes to think about this or write on it. Oh, I'm Elaine Hike-Aftermauer, by the way, for those of you who don't know me already. I'm a librarian.
The Padlet looks like it already has.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I can't remember how to. Things from Padlets. Do you know?
Well,
We
just
show
show
the
the
prompt.
Yeah.
Just show the prompt.
Yes.
You can, you're also welcome to share in the chat your thoughts if you want to. Give you 1 more minute. Uh, 20 more seconds. Just to wrap up your thoughts. All right, we're going to move on.
We will come back to it though.
Yes. Yes.
So
we will.
save what you were thinking and or writing.
Yeah. So this is just a quick agenda. We're going to do we did the free write. Now we're going to do the introductions for the speakers. We're going to talk a little bit about intersectionality. We're going to share some disability facts and statistics. And then share some things that you can do as an ally for our disabled community members, both faculty and students and other employees as well, to make our lives all a little bit more accessible and a little bit more welcoming and kind. And then we'll come back to the reflection, and then the last slide is just sharing some resources that we have. So again, I am Elaine Hike-Aftermauer, for those who don't know me. I am multiply disabled and loud about it. My disabilities were undiagnosed and unsupported throughout the entirety of my school career and most of my working career as well. And I am also a former facilitator of the community of equity and inclusion, which is what we called the Equity Academy when I was a part of it. And then we also have Stacy. I know. That's weird.
Yes. Okay. I am Stacy Gavin. I'm a learning disability specialist here at Cosumnes River College, and I have been doing assessment for learning disabilities for a long time. Back in 1991, I was the first an instructional aide to the very first learning disability specialist here on campus, and he later became a counselor here. He was wonderful and a wonderful mentor. David Agard, maybe I'm shouting out his name, but I miss him a lot. And anyway, he taught me a lot. So I've been doing it for a long time. I'm familiar with ADHD and learning disabilities and have worked with a lot of students who have both, because our studies indicate that about 75% of people who have learning disabilities also have ADHD and vice versa. So they really overlap a lot. I spent the last, I'm relatively new here, a year, a little more than a year, but I spent the last 20 years working with adults that were receiving assistance from the County of Sacramento. So I've got a lot of experience with people who are vulnerable and at risk, and I'm excited to be here today. Thank you.
And then we also have Leslie, who's gonna come introduce herself.
I am Leslie Gale, and I am a full-time faculty member in the English department. And I also was the first Equity Academy facilitator. What does the slide say? Oh, yeah. Divergent son in the wave of autism in the 2000s. And if you have been a parent of a disabled or neurodivergent child, then you know that a lot of research and work and facilitating with teachers and things like that comes with that. Also in spring 2024, I had a type B sabbatical in which I researched neurodivergent young adults, and I found so many fascinating things about this group, and particularly from the members of that group themselves and the writings that they're doing. I just want to say, if you're interested in really understanding neurodivergent young adults, get on social media, get on TikTok. They are amazing at explaining their experiences and how their brain works. And I mean, I learned so much from them, which I think is really important. And this particular condition is at the top of the news right now, thanks to RFK Jr. and some of the things that he's been saying about people in that community. And so I'm really excited to be with the other facilitators here for this workshop, and I'm going to let Kristen introduce herself.
And then we also have Kirsten, who is joining us online, and I'm going to very briefly.
Hi, it's nice to meet you. I teach English here at CRC. The picture you're seeing is me doing yoga, not because I'm doing it like I'm proud of it, doing it or something like that. It's just, I took a yoga class here at CRC, and it was really interesting. I worked with the DSPS student as a student, and it was really interesting what kind of accommodations are needed for different kinds of classes. I'm used to seeing accommodations like note taker, extra time for exam, special rooms for exams, etc. But it's really hard to think about what specific kind of classes might need as accommodations. So in 2024, I had a sabbatical, and I was a student only with DSPS, with disabilities at CRC and at LA City College. So one was a yoga class, one was a language class, and it was really interesting. I had a brain injury in 2023, and I was out for a while, and I came back 50%, etc. And the thing that was really interesting is that it was like disabilities can change very quickly. They're very fluid. Like when I was in the hospital, I was still taking a class at LACC, which, yeah, well, I don't know if that was a good idea, but it was interesting that what I could do and what I could not do changed pretty much every week or every 2 weeks. And so it was really interesting. At first, I couldn't even write. So I used a speech to type program, Kurzweil, if you know it. And so like, it was really interesting how everything changed. I had a obvious physical disability that everybody could see because I had a walker and a cane, but that disappeared at some point. And then it became interesting how people behave differently with a non-apparent disability. So the whole thing really gave me a lot of time and a lot of incentive to think about how this would affect students, and to also rethink some of my teaching strategies. And I thought I was already doing that before, but it's really helped to feel firsthand what students go through. And a little plug, I'm teaching SGS 320 here at CRC. It's called Introduction to Disability Studies. It's asynchronous online. It's one of the very few disability classes at community college, at actually any college in California. And we're going to hear tomorrow from somebody from UCLA, and they have a class like that. It's fall, second 8 weeks. So if you know anybody or you yourself are interested to take it, happy to see you. Thank you. Sorry, I go on to the next slide too. So one of the things that maybe aren't thought about.
Kirsten, hang on.
She's just giving me a sign for neurodivergent. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay, there we go.
One of the ideas or things you might have not thought about too much is maybe intersectionality. We know that certain groups are often highlighted, but we don't notice that these groups often belong to several other groups. And so when you talk about disability, and it's especially disadvantages that come from disabilities, you also have to think about additional disabilities, additional disadvantages coming from other groups potentially. So it could access like ethnicity and race, sexual orientation, gender identity, socioeconomic status, citizenship or migration status, religion, and more. Age could be in there. When one of the biggest surprises was when I wasn't able to walk, how quickly everybody was surprised. That's like, oh, wow, you're relatively young. And it's like, yeah, what does age have to do with that? So I've noticed that a lot of things, people have specific ideas. So these can all impact the access to medical care and diagnosis and support, and also compound disabilities, because it's already hard, for example, to find a well-paying job with a certain disabilities or all disabilities, but then comes another disadvantages from another group that also maybe hold you back on getting the job that you want, or yeah, so you can compound. An example we put on is that disability and disabled women and people of color are significantly underdiagnosed. So that's something to keep maybe in mind.
Sorry. Okay. All right. So I thought it might just be interesting to look at the breakdown of groups within DSPS here at CASUM this last year. This is pretty typical across the state as well. If you look at the California Community College Chancellor's Office numbers, it's very similar. I think I won't read it all out to you. You can see sort of how, I don't know why it says six. Oh, six.
Yeah,
That. No, that's wonderful. Thank you. And so that leads exactly to what I was going to say. Wow, good job. That we know that there are many more students out there, it's typically what the estimates are 10 to 12%, would qualify for services. So we are really, you'll hear a lot more about this on Friday, but put it in your syllabuses that we exist. Because we know, for example, there are a lot of people in the mental health category who are not receiving services. If you have a diagnosis of depression, you may have a hard time focusing in class. So let's get you some support. The only last thing I would say about this slide is 2 areas really have jumped pretty dramatically since COVID. One is mental health, and then the explosion of diagnosis of autism. So the autism spectrum disorder and mental health disability, those numbers have really increased in the last several years. Sure. I don't know if I'm catching the next one.
I can't remember. I did want to add a note about this slide as well, which is that I also took a look at like our ethnic groups from the HawkDash board that we have to show our enrollment data and stuff. So 6% of our students being enrolled in DSPS may not seem like a lot, but like if you compare it to other groups who are, marginalized in various ways and we focus on serving them, like, for example, like our Filipino population of students is like 4.2%. And, our Native American student population is, I can't remember the exact number, but it's, Sabrina, do you know? Very low. It's like 1%. So this is like, and those are groups that we really focus on serving and really focus on making our campus community very welcoming and supportive to them. And 6% is, also a significant number of students if we're comparing it to the services and community and stuff that we are trying to offer to these other marginalized groups. Not to mention, again, the intersectionality of identities. Yeah, so it's 6% is pretty big, and these are only the students who are enrolled in DSPS. And my experience as a student was I did not have any services for a variety of reasons. And I was undiagnosed and unsupported. So there are also plenty of students like I was. I did attend Los Rios. There are plenty of students like I was who have things that they, should be getting support with who have no idea what's available or that they even qualify.
This is thumbs up to the interpreter.
Yeah, let me spotlight. Okay,
You got it first.
Yes.
There it goes.
I just want to add on to the intersectionality piece. I went to our big conference in October, and we had a panel of people who had been in the field for 50 years. And one person's story really stood out to me. She was fighting for rights for people with disabilities in the 1970s and 80s. And she got a call one night from a legislator in Sacramento, and he said, "Can you come down? We're going to debate the bill tomorrow to give." And I should know. It was probably, anyway, it doesn't matter what bill it was. Anyway, when she got there, she noticed that all the other ethnic, gender identity, sexual orientation groups were there. And she had been called in at the last minute. And she stood up and said, "I'm all of you. I am, in our people with disabilities are every single one of these other groups." And the bill passed, and the assembly person said, "I will never do that again. Forget about you. Forget about the people with disabilities, because you're right. You are everybody." So that gets to the intersectionality piece too. Thank you.
Yeah. So now I'm just gonna share some, really briefly share some facts about disability and disabled people in the United States. So in 2016, the CDC reported the results of a survey that they did by calling people on the phone. So again, who, gets called on the phone to people with phones? I want to talk, we don't have enough time to get into sampling, but we are all professionals and we can extrapolate. Anyway, so according to the results of that survey, 1 in 4 adults in the United States self-reported a disability. So that's 25% of people who were contacted by phone, who had a phone, who picked up the phone, who, had a lot of the times it's hard to have a phone if you don't have a residence. So like homeless population maybe was not exactly included in this. So that's a huge amount of people, 25% of the population of the United States. And that isn't even like specifically targeting, again, like intersectional identities and like those groups who were a lot of people in populations who were left out of this survey. So the actual rate, I'm guessing, is much, much higher. Disability is a broad term and it can include mental illness and neurodivergence. And that's how we are using it in this presentation. So if you have identities that you do not necessarily think make you a part of the disabled community, you don't have to self-identify as disabled, but I want to say you are welcome. You are welcome to join us because we're rad. Disabilities are fluid, so they can be temporary or permanent. They can appear gradually or very, very suddenly. And symptoms can vary greatly from day to day. And that is a part of my personal experience, is that some days I'm fine, some days I can't move. It just depends on factors that are a mystery. So the majority of disabilities are not visible disabilities, and invisible disability rates are rising sharply due to the failure to manage the COVID-19 pandemic. Long COVID and the other things, bodily systems and brains that have damage due to COVID is, skyrocketing. Like long COVID numbers are terrifying if you actually look at them globally and not what the United States tracks, because it's different. Yeah, so just be aware that the COVID pandemic, which is now endemic, it was a mass and still continues to be a mass disabling event. A couple more things. Over 1/3 of people show an unconscious bias against those with a disability. And this is higher than levels of bias on the basis of gender or race. This was a British organization study from 2014. I'm sure there's more. It's very surprisingly difficult to find studies on disability and people's perceptions of disabled people, which is a whole other conversation. The most startling fact that I will share with you that many people have not thought of before, if you live long enough, you will become disabled. Abledness and being abled, being able-bodied, being able-minded, or whatever we want to call it, is a temporary condition. Either you die first or you become disabled. And this is just the truth. I'm also going to talk a little bit about models of disability. So this is the model of disability that is currently the most prevalent in our society and very, very prevalent within the medical establishment in this country and many other countries. So it's the medical model of disability, and disability is a problem that is an individual's problem, and it is their or their caregiver's responsibility to modify them to be as like an abled or normal person as they possibly can. some other parts of this are that disabled people operate from an inherent deficit, and disabled people should figure out how to assimilate into society as it exists, rather than try to make society more accessible. And the disabled person or those who assist the disabled person hold the responsibility to just fit into how the world works as it is. This is very prevalent. This is very common. This is the line of thinking behind many, many, many therapies and treatments and stuff. I don't agree with it. This is the model of disability that I prefer to work with, which is the diversity or human variation. So what are understood as disabilities are natural variability within the human species, any kind of disability. So it occurs where the environment within and within where a person, the environment where a person is situated, can only accommodate a limited range of characteristics. So like the environment, for example, of this campus, it can only accommodate, really truly accommodate people who can walk upstairs, because there aren't enough elevators, there aren't enough ramps. It's a nightmare. Some buildings are entirely inaccessible. The classroom that we're sitting in right now has way too many chairs and desks in it for anybody who uses a mobility aid to navigate. So yeah, so it's the environment is not accessible, and disability is a function of the environment not being designed. There are other models of disability that we don't have time to get into. Some of them are like the social model of disability, which is really where the disability's context of the environment comes from. And then the minority model, which was focused on putting in like legal rights and protections mostly. And so, but they don't sufficiently account for human variation in our species, and impairments continue to exist even within accessible environments. Somebody who needs a ventilator to breathe is always going to need a ventilator to breathe, regardless of the environment that surrounds them. And an anti-discrimination strategy, which is kind of what the minority model was focusing on, doesn't go far enough to dismantle oppression and intersectionality and working, building coalition between these marginalized and oppressed groups is a must in order for us to grow and move forward as a society. Couple more truths here. The difficulties we as disabled people, that's the we, face in society are largely a result of society's failure to consider our existence. We as a disabled population, we are not thought of on a broad scale. And even if we are thought of, we are last thought. It is always an addition. It is always a, oh, I forgot about, oh, we need to do something about this at like the last minute, rather than making accessible things insofar as we can make things accessible, be like the first starting point. And also another truth is that inclusive design or accessibility benefits everybody. There's something called the curb cutter effect, where disabled people lobbied and organized and fought for sidewalks to have curb dips, so that wheelchairs and walkers and other accessibility devices could get off the curb safely onto a crosswalk. This also benefits a lot of people. One of the biggest examples is people who are using strollers for their children. It made everybody's lives easier. Also, anybody who just like doesn't want to fall off a curb, because stepping down on accident is unpleasant. So there are things like that. Audiobooks is another big one. Closed captions for television and movies. Like I use closed captions all the time. I'm not part of the deaf or hard of hearing community. I have other issues. Audio processing is one of them, but I use closed captions constantly, and I'm so grateful that the deaf and hard of hearing and disabled community really truly did fight for the right to have closed captions and have that access, because it helps everybody. And then we were going to talk a little bit more about this. Who's turn?
Yeah, I'll talk about that slide. Why does inclusive design or accessibility matter? You might not be aware of a certain student that's giving you a letter of accommodation. You don't have somebody specific right now, but like we talked, it could be invisible. There could be issues with the paperwork that needs to be done. It could be next semester. You never know what happens. So accessibility refers to enabling access for a wider range of people, be it a product, a device, the environment, or services. It's interesting. I took the Canvas course on universal design, and I'm not saying it's a bad course. It really taught me a lot. But it was interesting that I thought my Canvas course was actually pretty accessible, the online course. And then this summer I had a blind student, and suddenly we were really fighting, the student and I, and different people on campus helped me figure out how to get things working for the student, because yeah, universal design course focused on closed captioning, for example. Yeah, that's not really going to help him. When I show movies, what's going to happen? We need audio descriptions. So I learned a lot about that. Acknowledgement that our students not only have unique learning strengths, but many of them have experienced unique barriers to their learning. And we might not even think about it. There's quite a lot that I wasn't aware of until I was in that position, to be honest. And it's taking into account the diversity of our students. They're not just like all like this, but there's a bigger variety, so to speak. The next slide is disabled perspectives and experiences, framing the experience from a diversity human variation model. There are actually a lot of experiences that can add. For example, new ideas, unique experiences, new perspectives. I'm not blind myself, obviously, but since I just recently, a few weeks ago, had a blind student in my online class, it was literature adapted into film. That was the name of the class. And obviously we watch film. And it was really interesting to see how few films there are for blind people, because they need audio descriptions, which explains what's on the screen between the actors talking. And it was really hard to find them. And there's very little, I think, range. And then the interesting thing was we also talked about things like audios or scores in movies. And it was really interesting to hear or to read from somebody who can't see the pictures, how much attention is getting paid to the sound and how much the student notices that I actually always overlooked in audio. So it's interesting. I learned a lot through that student in class. So there's sensory and cognitive diversity, as I just mentioned. The student noticed things that I really didn't pay that much attention to because something else was happening on the screen that seemed more important, but the student couldn't hear that. There's a lot of attention to detail and pattern recognition, especially for neurodivergent students. Interest in ground truth, unique relationship to each other, no matter the country. There's kind of, I don't know if it's that truth, but there's a saying that, for example, neurodivergent people will recognize each other. Like, just go to a big crowd and you know who is who. Just because there's certain behaviors, experiences that they have in common, and they behave a certain way because of that. Resilience. Of course, it takes a long time to become part of DSPS, to be honest. It takes a lot of, once again, I'm not complaining or showing them in a bad light that do what they do and they don't have enough funding, to be honest. But it takes a lot of paperwork, and yeah, it takes a while to get what you want. For example, I was taking classes at LA City College, and the brain injury happened, and I was in the middle of a semester, and I tried to get accommodations, but I couldn't even find the office because in LA, it's not called DSPS, but OP. And I'm like, how, like, I couldn't find DSPS because, of course, they didn't have that. So it took me forever to actually find that office. And then we had to do paperwork, and I couldn't even use my hand to move the mouse. It was so frustrating sometimes to actually figure all that out. So there is resilience and perseverance. There is some support, and but it's usually way underfunded. And yeah, a lot of things take a lot longer. When I took the class at LA, we had handwritten homework. Well, the problem was that I didn't really handwrite. I couldn't write at all. So at some point it started, but it took like hours to get the handwriting done. And so these are all small things that you might not think about maybe when you plan a course, but they might have a huge impact on the person.
Thank you, Kirsten. We have a question in the audience.
I was just gonna point out that Sabrina has some comments in the.
Oh, so
chat.
I was just sharing that to Kirsten's point about just not just closed captioning, but alternative text, which is text that describes images that you use in your Canvas course. Timmy, who is she's our adjunct universal design and accessibility services coordinator. She made an attempt to try to do a campaign to encourage faculty. When she first started, it was like a few thousand. And then as the courses started to go active and live, it like exponentially. So it like to the hundreds of thousands of images that we all use in our courses. And I think that what it told her was like what it brought awareness to is that it's not just like that's just one thing that's she attempted as a low hanging fruit, like if you could just do that, but even as one person, right, trying to move the masses, so to speak, it's something she still did, but it was just didn't uncover until she did that report to see how many didn't have alt text, for example. And I want to encourage, because Timmy's actually been a part of the district's effort back when it was called Fast Track. This is before the online course design coordinator effort during the pandemic. And she's also knowledgeable with the how to get your documents into a format so that your PDFs or Word docs are readable with the screen readers that are used for our blind students. But that being said, I also wanted to note what Kirsten shared, which was her experience was that our faculty coordinators aren't on contract in the summer, which inherently reveals a gap in support that we need to find a way to address. And I don't have the solution today, but I'm taking note so I can bring it back.
Something I want to say real quickly is also that with the alt text, it reminded me, it's not just you who can use that. It's also something I just ask my students to do. It's pretty easy. You just explain it in the discussion postings. My students have exercises where they are asked to post images. And I tell my students that they should use alt text, or if they record something, you should have closed captioning because they never know who is in class with them. And the blind student who was in that class actually sent me an email. I mentioned how nice it was that I made sure that the students actually used the same process. And it's like a tiny little paragraph, and most people are smart enough to figure it out, or smart is bad word, patient enough or something to figure it out. So I just want to bring that up.
Oh, I can help. Sorry. Yep. Got you.
And then we're gonna swap
Andrew. There. Got it?
Yes.
Okay.
Whoops.
I got you, Millie. I'll get you back up
There
there.
we go. Okay, we're good. We're figuring it out. So, one thing, that I want to talk about, that is deeply important to, the disability experience and community and my own personal experience, is something called CRIP time. CRIP as, the shortened for cripple. If that makes you uncomfortable, sit with it. Is what I have to say. So CRIP time, is a shorthand for the complexity of the disabled experience in a world with many barriers to accessibility. So the term denotes extra time, the time that is needed for accommodations of various kinds, that a person might need to perform any variety of tasks. It also notifies a conflict with normative time or abled time, which is the seemingly normal apportioning or segmenting of time in daily life. And I'm going to just give some quick examples of ways that like my CRIP time, basically. So I don't drive. I don't have a driver's license. Going from my house to campus on public transit takes about 2 to 2.5 hours door to door. At this point, I take lifts every day, which is every day I'm on campus, which is only 3 days a week. But that is an average of $50 to $60 per day to get to work. I'm very lucky in that I can afford that. If I could not afford that, it would be 2.5 hours, 2 to 2.5 hours each way. That is not total. So it would be 4 to 5 hours a day for me to get to my workplace. I did it for a while. It was untenable because CRIP time, also an area of CRIP time for me is I need much more rest than the average person. Average, abled, normal, whatever. I have various energy limiting conditions that are disabling and disable me. And having 4 to 5 hours of travel per day is not sustainable for me. I mean, I don't think it's sustainable for anybody, but that's one of them. Another one is I tend to move very slowly because my joints are bad. My bones are wrong and my joints are bad. So it takes me more time to navigate campus, any campus that I'm on. So if there are events that have a very short window between them, I'm going to be late because it takes me more time. So those are, and mostly I do not use mobility aids. If I were using my rollerator or if I was in a wheelchair, it would take even more time because the campus is simply not designed for those of us who use wheels to get around. So those are some examples of CRIP time for me. And I just want you, this is a reflection question. I want you to just think about it, hang on to it, reflect on it when you are designing your courses, designing your curriculum, and also when you are deciding how to treat yourself. I just want you to think about how you can embrace CRIP time in the treatment of your students and in the treatment of yourself. So I have a few examples here. So in relationship to students, be aware of the longer time it may take disabled students to complete assignments or tests or to travel to and navigate campus. Be aware of the heavy cognitive load of constantly monitoring others' responses. So this is something that a lot of disabled people face. It's something that in particular people with neurodivergence, neurodiversity, or people with various mental health conditions have to deal with. one really concrete example is talk slower and face the class when speaking, because there are many people who rely on lip reading, even if they're not part of the deaf and hard of hearing community. For example, I have audio processing problems. If you're facing away from me, I don't know what you just said. Another piece of actionable advice is to offer flexibility in assignments, deadlines, and lectures. So that can be multiple modalities, that can be flexible deadlines, that can be different ways of letting the students show their learning and understanding. If you want, any examples, I'm sure that I and Leslie probably will be happy to talk about that, and Stacy, and Kirsten, all of us. Also cultivate patience about requests to repeat or rephrase information and instructions. And this is something that applies to not only the neurodiverse community, students with autism, students with ADHD, students with whatever, but also, again, people who are deaf or hard of hearing, or people with audio processing problems, and also just exercise empathy. I just assume your students are trying the best that they can. And if we take that as a starting point, I find it is much easier to be kind and to come to arrangements and accommodations that work for everybody, so that the student can continue their educational journey, which is our goal. We also have some ally actions. So these are more concrete things that you can do. So within campus culture, within the community of those of us who work here, include disability and disabled voices in diversity, equity, and inclusion work. We are a part of this, and disabled people are within every other marginalized and oppressed group. So advocate for and support disability-centered clubs and spaces. I would love it, and I know the rest of the presenters would love it, if we had a disability space, like the spaces within the Center of Inclusion for Belonging. If we had a disability space somewhere, that, like a room that was sensory friendly, where those of us who get overstimulated can go chill out for a second. And this would really, really help our students. And also consider disabled perspectives and needs when planning events. There is one example that I will share. There was a welcome reception for new faculty to Los Rios the year that I was hired, in late August or early September. And the venue that was chosen was not accessible. It was a historical building. We had several people who navigated with mobility aids of different kinds. There was no way to get a wheelchair or a walker or a rollator in that space. And then there was a woman who was using different mobility aids who was it was very, very difficult for her to navigate the space because it was not navigable. And also there were at least one deaf faculty member who attended this reception, and there was no interpreter at all. They had not thought of that or planned it. And it was very frustrating and made me and the other disabled people feel pretty unwelcome, which was not a great introduction to the district. And I love where I work. I love CRC in particular, but it hurt my feelings and was also kind of illegal. So yeah. So some ally actions for support services. Let your students know collectively at the start of class, when you start your class sessions, that if they want or they need accommodations, to speak to you, and that you will welcome any requests. They might not be, I mean, the feasibility of various things can be worked out, but it's important that your students know that they can talk to you and that you will be a welcoming presence and try to get things sorted out. You can also bring a DSPS representative into your class to speak to students about the available services. So we have Stacy, we have several other people. So bring DSPS to your classes, and that way the students will know and they will put a face to the services so it's not as intimidating. Also, if a student expresses a need for some kind of accommodation or just generally, just take that information and advocate for the student and interface with whichever services, whether that's DSPS or something else, that will meet that need. Because the student has come to you because they are trying to build a trusting relationship with you and asking for your help. And what we want to do when our students ask for our help with things is help them, or at least that's where I come from. And that's how I think. And if you can address that need without making students scale more barriers, like DSPS, which is wonderful, and I have nothing bad to say about it, but it is also a barrier. For example, I never got enrolled in DSPS because I can't drive, so I couldn't go to campus I was taking classes at a center in Davis, and I couldn't get to the Sac City campus to get assessed or anything. So it was just unavailable to me. So if you can address the need without making students do anything else, just do it. You make the decisions about your classroom. So you don't necessarily need an official like accommodation request or letter to just be like, oh, you want to wear headphones while we're free writing? You can focus. Cool, totally fine. And if you can't meet the need without more resources, then connect them to DSPS or whoever else is appropriate with a warm handoff. So just like an introduction, putting a face to a name, making sure that they know that there's like relationships between our various different departments on campus so that it's not so scary.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Where is the EOP building? Or where the EOP and the help? I mean, in the foster youth program. I don't know. Could you?
Sorry, there was a question of a person. Anyway, so some ally actions you can do in instructional design for your curricula, your courses. Just embrace crib time, embrace the concept of crib time, and just have things be flexible. So include multiple modalities in both instruction and assignments or learning assessments. Learn more about inclusive or universal design for learning, the accessibility features in Canvas and guidelines in Canvas, or like the accessibility for online documents, online homework systems. That's a big thing. Some of them are not very accessible. So if you know how they work and can help your students navigate them, and also include disabled voices or disabled people's work and life experiences in your curricula as you are able to. There's plenty out there, and I'm happy to recommend some.
Along the lines of flexibility for instructors, think about the different ways you could assess any of the objectives in the class. Traditionally in English classes, they have had outrageous word counts for our writing classes. 5,000, 6,000 words. Is that really necessary? They have pulled back on that recently. One thing, I think what Kristen was saying about how long it takes sometimes to be able to complete an assignment. I also had a blind student last semester and last spring semester, and I had no idea. I went to Timmy, she looked at all my Canvas materials. She said everything looked fine. I found out that student was taking 4 hours to do a 15-question quiz. And so if they don't let you know that, you have no idea what a huge load that is for them. If with my neurodivergent students, often they will have a prompt and they'll write 2 sentences because they've answered it in their mind. And I try little details, the traditional English teacher thing. And I just started saying, can you draw me a picture about that? Or give me a doodle, or send me you're a musician, okay, send me a what you did on your trumpet, that's related to this. So really being open-minded about the different ways that these objectives can be fulfilled. I also want to mention on the next slide, we know that many of our campus classrooms and spaces are not accessible. We talked about her own experiences. We also need to recognize, particularly for neurodivergent students, the immense cognitive load of trying to fit in, which they call masking. And people can become very successful by masking, but ultimately there will be a meltdown. The person will be so exhausted, they won't be able to do anything. So if you have someone with tics, or you do have someone who can't stand those fluorescent lights, or you're in BS 112A or B, and there is music and yelling while you're giving an exam. Just be aware, if it may not bother you, but it really can have a huge impact. So another thing that I've discovered as an instructor is students often will try to do well in the course without DSPS. And I understand that fully. I feel like the more what Elaine was saying about inviting the someone from DSPS to come. I did that in last spring semester, and I had students taking notes. And then I got some accommodation letters. Even though it's in my syllabus, even though I mentioned it in class, there's something about this really amazing person who comes and she has prizes and she has freebies that she's giving out. It gives them a good feeling about being associated with DSPS. So the next slide is Elaine and me. And I just want to say, for me, having a neurodivergent son made me a better person, because I automatically empathized with what he was going through. And having disabled students in my classroom has made me a better instructor. Absolutely. So if we can have kind of like that mindset of, what can I learn from this? Like Kirsten with her blind student. So if we go back to our free write, how much time do we have? Oh, okay.
I think it's still 12:30.
15.
15 minutes.
15 minutes. Okay.
So we would love to hear some of your thoughts about that free write, and maybe even thoughts about what you initially wrote and then maybe rethought about it. And this is open to our folks here in the classroom and all of the wonderful people who are joining us through Zoom.
You're welcome to put your thoughts in the chat. If you want to speak on Zoom, please raise your hand. If you want to speak in here, we'll do that too. I apologize again for the Padlet not being correct. I didn't reformat it. I'm sorry. You can still use it. There's some other stuff. Do we need to switch interpreters?
Yeah, please. Thank you.
Good timing.
in the back.
I've seen the headphone thing quite a few times. And I think initially when I saw it, I was taken aback, like, why are you wearing headphones in class? Don't you need to listen to me or listen to fellow students? And I just asked one day, just privately, and they let me know that it just helped them kind of block out kind of extraneous sounds. Okay, cool, sounds good to me. And so now I just am not bothered by it if I do see it in my classroom. And I know that they'll let me know if I need to know, or if I'm worried that they're not, maybe their performance in the class isn't what I was hoping it would be for them, or what maybe they were hoping for themselves. I might ask at that point.
Kirsten, were you able to hear that comment?
Pardon? What did you say?
Were you able to hear that comment?
Yes, I was able to hear that. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank you so much. I had a similar experience. I came up with this idea of this free write based on that experience. And I had a student who came in and during the whole class session was wearing headphones. And I'm like, okay. But she came to me and said, this is why. They may not do that. So understand that there are reasons that they have that. Back in the day, I've been here 25 years, back in the day, there were all these policies of no phones being visible. Well, there are a lot of ways to use the phone in your classroom. Like, why would I have dictionaries in my class when they all have it, in the palm of their hand? And my blind student used her phone all the time to be able to record, to be able to make notes to herself of something that she needed to do during class. So hopefully everyone's over that by now. Any other comments from the physical classroom or the Zoom room? Or questions? We gave you a lot of information and didn't really pause. Kim.
Yeah,
Oh, no.
Okay, so I'm a teacher in deaf studies and I use sign language. And I want to complain about DSPS. I always get these emails and messages, and I think it's for neurodivergent, different kinds of neurodivergent disabilities that come to me. And I've got to teach them all. How do I communicate in the deaf community? And I've noticed that in the past 2 years, they come to me. Before I might have had maybe 45 students. Now it's over 100. And I'm overwhelmed. Do you understand my problem? I'm overwhelmed. You notice, I guess last semester I got I brought toys, a pressure ball or, these things you squeeze, like a fidget ball, and they all looked and they were so happy and they came to me and I was like, okay, fine. And I was like them, I had the same expressions and I was wondering why though. Why is DSPS sending these other disabilities into my class I that don't really want to learn ASL? So I just don't understand this. Is there suggestions? Is there anything?
I may not really be able to answer that very well, but just on the surface, I would say it's when students sign up for classes, we assume, it's not a good word, I guess, that they do want to learn ASL, and that's why they're in your class. But maybe that's something we need to talk about. And certainly I can take that concern back. I'm not sure. I think what you're saying is maybe some of our counselors are funneling people into the ASL classes without,
they're suggesting it and maybe the student isn't really interested in that, but I can definitely take that concern back and see what we get from that. Yeah.
Kirsten, oh,
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Well, one thing I also want to mention maybe is that maybe that's not rude, but like it's maybe a little bit extreme, but it's true that it makes people with disabilities feel safer to go to an instructor who is very open about the disabilities they have. And I noticed that as a student myself, I noticed as a faculty, it's just like kind of like, oh, you're part of the community, so you understand like better what I go through. So I think that might be part of it as well, that some of the students may need more empathy or time or just understanding, and they feel that a person that is part of the group might be a better choice than somebody who's very, very strict and very inflexible about how they run the course.
Yeah, no, you go.
okay, so there are a couple things that I can think of. One is that the rates of students who are neurodiverse and requesting accommodations has skyrocketed
Yes.
in recent years, so there's just a larger population. And the other thing is, there are certain neurodiverse brains that often have a hard time with speaking and verbalizing. And learning ASL is something that can give them an avenue of communication for the times when they cannot speak. So if the students aren't necessarily interested in learning ASL once they get to your class, they might have been interested before the work came in. But those are just two things that I can think of.
The only other thing that I would add, it's possible I'm not an academic advisor in any way, but the foreign language requirement for a lot of our students to go on to UC, I believe, I don't know if CSU, but UC requires a foreign language, and ASL works for that. And some of our counselors may think ASL is a better chance of success for some of these students than, Spanish or Chinese.
But I think what we're finding is that there needs to be a broad discussion,
Yes.
like what Malene was saying about when you talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, thinking about this particular scenario as something that could be a thought partnership with the instructors and DSPS,
Absolutely.
etc.,
Yes.
and the counselors.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, I think interdepartmental communication is definitely the key to supporting our disabled and neurodiverse students.
Absolutely.
There's,
Leslie.
so, yeah, we have okay, Leslie, did you want to tackle this, or do you want to like send out an email afterwards?
I can put some links in.
The question is, at the beginning of the session, someone mentioned, which was Leslie, going on social media to learn more. Can you recommend specific accounts or folks to follow? I'd love to keep learning. And that's from Caroline. Thank you, Caroline.
This is someone, I can't quite read the name, said that in ESL they have a very similar situation.
Yes, that's Andy. Thank you, Andy. Yeah, so I think, I mean, this is great because we know that there just needs to be more communication about this stuff. We've got about 4 minutes left of our time. Is there anything else that people wanted to share or questions? Yeah, oh, yeah.
I just had a question. You were mentioning earlier about accommodating students without the formal form. I had a blind student a couple of years back, and the first class they were in with me, they did have the DSPS form. And then there was another former student who was working as support staff who was helping them in the class. And then she took another class the next semester and didn't bother to go through the process to get the DSPS forms. And DSPS specifically told me this other support student cannot help them in class until they request.
Yeah, that's
forms.
too to
So I was
fund
kind
it.
of, yeah, so I was kind of wondering, it's like, how do you get around that? For whatever reason, the student didn't want to bother with getting the forms for that second semester. And I don't know if they just wanted to try it without, or I don't know what the
Yeah.
situation was.
That's possible. It could have just been too heavy of a lift, or the student could have just wanted to see if they could, do it on their own. Because that is something where people are hesitant to use the resources, for many, many different reasons. But the accommodations I was particularly thinking of were things like headphones, or like when I was in a math class, I asked the instructor if I could use a basic calculator, not like a scientific one, just a basic one to do the arithmetic for me, because I can't do numbers, my brain doesn't. And she just let me, and it was fine, and I didn't have to go through DSPS. I didn't have to, so that I wasn't, sitting there counting on my fingers trying to subtract 7 from 15. I had a baby calculator to do it for me. So it's more stuff like that, or like, can I, like students who want to sit at either the front or the back of the room because of various, or wear sunglasses in class because they can't deal with the lights, stuff like that. When it comes to like note takers and stuff, that is definitely more of a DSPS. So I would,
And scribes,
yeah.
you'd have to have the paperwork.
Well, in this case,
Yeah.
the person who had been an assistant was fine on doing it just, for free, but DSPS didn't want her to do that. It's like, no, don't come in and help her unless she actually asks for it.
Yeah. I mean, there are also ways to just like create community in your classes, like a community of like communal note taking. Or like having some kind of, a lot of students will use like a Discord server, which is a chat gaming app for their, like class communication with each other, or like communal Google Doc where everybody takes notes and everybody has access to it. And those are things that you can encourage your students to set up. If that's something that you want to encourage. I think it's great.
In my English class last spring, my student assistant set up a Discord. And the great thing about that is the teacher isn't on it. And the students used it to communicate with each other and help each other.
Yeah.
I highly
And that way they will often ask each other questions instead of coming to the instructor every time. So that can take a load off of the instructor, not having to answer, when is this due 70 million times. We are about at time. So if there's nobody else who wants to talk or nothing else to share, I want to thank everybody for coming. Thank you so much. I also do want to put in a plug for the library, which is have librarians come to your class also, as well as DSPS, because we have a lot of services, and a lot of services in the library that can help your students, disabled or not. I look forward to seeing all of you at convocation. There will be there are some resources here in the last slide. Our slideshow will be shared. We have recorded the presentation, so that will be uploaded to the professional
Can
development.
you just explain that first link so they know what
Yes.
that means?
Yeah, so this is the top link, CRC DSPS. This is the disability support programs and services link on the website.
Oh, sorry, I thought it was the library guide.
No.
Oh,
So
okay.
resources in the
Oh,
library.
okay, got it.
That's this one.
Sorry.
Yeah, so this is something that I made to support convocation this year, which is just resources. And it is a work in progress, so there will be more things added to it. Instructional resources of design, other media. There's a lot of great TED Talks and essays and various other things, films, recommended reading of things in the library. I will also be tabling at convocation with a bunch of books and some other stuff. And I will be able to check them out to you right there.
Really?
Yep, I'll bring my laptop. And then, DSPS again. So yes, this will be sent out. Please also fill out the Flex survey. We really, really appreciate your feedback. And then somebody who is on the professional development committee, your feedback guides our future convocations. So please, please, please remember to fill it out. I'm gonna drop a link in the chat.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you to the interpreters as well.
Yes, thank you.
very much.
Great job.
And Andrew, we appreciate you greatly.
Thanks.
You know, when you were talking about breaks in between sessions, it reminded me of COVID when there were